All right, so here you can see this is the actual muslin I was wearing the other day, and I'm going to throw it in the wash because I actually got some spots on it when I was wearing it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash this, and then I'm going to put a yoga pants waistband on it because my figure allows me to just pull them on and off without needing a zipper. So this is going to make like a nice, comfortable pair of pants that I can pull on and, you know, really go anywhere in. I'm very excited about it. And let me show you this now. This is the size 16 pattern pieces because I had to cut out everything and make all of my muslin. So I have all the sizes cut up from making the pants muslin. So I'm going to show you how to remove ease on the Happy Pants pattern now because it is a full leg. Like, so if you have purchased it or if you're working with it, this is the length of the actual pattern as it is. And if I turn it around, I'll show you. This is the size 16, and this happens to be the low crotch curve style. So this is how it looks, okay? And I'm turning it around just so these, all these lines aren't going to get in our way. So what you're going to do is you're going to measure your knee and then you're going to measure the pattern. So this is the size 16, and I'm just going to mark my seam allowances here. So the back leg on the size 16 measures 15 1/4, and the front measures just marking my seam allowances 14 inches. So that's a total of 29 1/4 is the total leg width at the knee. That's a full leg. So look at your measurement. Let's say your knee measured 20 inches. You've got 9 extra inches there. So let's say you wanted to get rid of 6 of them. So you had 3 inches of ease at your knee. So the first thing you're going to want to do is divide that in half. So our 6 inches now turns into 3 inches. So you've got 3 inches that you're going to want to remove by the time you get down to the knee area. Because if I mark it on here and then I sew through both, that's doubled. That's why I'm cutting it in half. So we're going to work with the side and inseam first. And then what we'll do is you'll see how that is. Now the first step in deciding how to take in the leg is to look at your shape. And I think I might have talked about this last week. My shape is very straight. Let me see if I can cue up a picture for you to see what I mean on this. All right, so here's one of my muslins that's almost perfect. I have some stuff going on, so don't be judgmental on that. But what I want to do is show you how this is looking. Let me move this over so I can see what I'm doing here. All right, so see how my shape is straight. So I'm looking at my side seam and I'm looking at, you know, what my leg is doing. It's very straight. Okay. So what that means is if my pattern fits at the hip, then the fabric below my hip needs to be there because my leg doesn't really go in very much. It's going to go in a little bit because it's going to get, you know, my legs get more slender as I get to my knee, but I don't have a hip curve where I can grab a handful of fabric underneath my fullest hip to take out. So for me, or for people who have that straight shape, it may work out that you need to take a little bit more in on the inseam than the side seam. If you have a full curved, a very curvy side seam, and so after your full hip, if you can grab a handful of fabric under that full hip, then you may need to take more. So the first step is to decide that. Okay, so you know, going with the example of me, I don't need to take in as much on my side seam as I would on my inseam because the fabric is hanging straight down and almost against my leg to my knee, almost. I mean, by the time I get to my knee, there is more ease than at the hip, obviously, but for my shape, what I would do is I would take that 3 inches, and just as a starting point, I'm going to divide that in a third and 2/3. So I'd have 1 inch on my side seam, and I'd have 2 inches on my inseam. So let me just go back to my picture-in-picture. Okay, so I'm going to mark 1 inch over here, and I'm going to mark 2 inches over here. And there's my 2 inches. So obviously, if I put my front leg under here as well, you can see that when I sewed this, I'd really be taking off 4 inches here, because when I sew through, I'm 2 inches and 2 inches. All right. So that's what I would do there. And then I would do my 1 inch, and I would blend back into where my hip curve starts. So somewhere right over here where you can see the hip curve starting, I would take that in like this. Okay. Now notice I'm working with the pattern as it comes in its original length. And the reason why it's easier to do this than to work with a full leg is that once you adjust at the knee or at the bottom of this pattern, you can just attach the bottom back on and then, you know, take it off on one side. So if you're making straight pants, for example, the rest of your pattern under here is a rectangle. So you can just, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I have a little bit of a cold. So you can add the rectangle back on. So it's almost easier to make these adjustments working with just the top part of the pattern. So that's how I would get rid of, and I would try to start getting rid of the extra ease in the leg to create a slack or a more fitted leg style. Now, after doing that, what ended up happening to me is I still had too much fabric on my back leg. When I looked at my side view and my back view, it just looked like I didn't want the amount of fullness that was back there. The front leg was fine. So after I took in my side and inseam, you know, so again, you would do the same thing here. So I'd have my 2 inches here. And I'm just going to just draw this quick, you know, something like that. And my 1 inch over here. Okay. All right. So the front leg, after taking it in on the side and inseam, was fine. I didn't need to take any more out. But in the back, it was still a little bit too full. So because my side and inseams are now agreeing with each other, I didn't want to play with just taking in the back leg to get rid of more fullness. So what I did was I drew a line that was about 5 inches above the base of the pattern, you know, where my knee notch is on the pattern. Okay, and I drew a line, so that's this line right here. And then I drew a diagonal line from that line to my crotch curve. And just keep in mind this is backwards, like really it would be facing this way, but I didn't want all this to be confusing. Okay, so now I've got a slash line here, I've got my grain line here, and my diagonal slash line is ending up at the intersection of this horizontal line I drew and my grain line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the pattern. I'm going to cut straight through the bottom of the pattern to that intersection, and then I'm going to go across the pattern like this to the side seam, but I don't want to go through the side seam, so I'm going to just make a little hinge here, and that will, you know, keep that secure. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to go right up to my crotch curve, but not through my crotch curve. So now you can see I've got this going on. So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to take in the leg you know, behind the knee and approaching the crotch point. So my first step is I'm going to overlap this piece. And one of the things I'm learning is less is more. So it may look like it's a huge mess. And I think I don't know if I shared this with you yet, but I want to show you what my, I want to show you what my muslin looked like after I took in this little bit. Let me see if I can find that picture. Okay, so this is this picture right here. It's hard to see, but I actually I stitched in the diagonal line and across the leg and then straight down, and it really smoothed up that leg. So see, this is how I tested it. Okay, what I did was I actually stitched in from 0 at the center back crotch, at, you know, at the curve to here, and then across, and then all the way down too. All right, so that's how I tested this. And the cool thing about this adjustment is you don't need to change your inseam and side seam shapes. You can just draw it in from within the pattern. And sometimes that's easier when you've already taken it in your stitching lines and those are agreeing, the front and back stitching lines are agreeing with each other. So now instead of just working with the back, side, and inseam separately, playing with it and then maybe throwing it off compared to what the front's doing, you can take it in within. So, you know, I can measure what I took in, and really, if I turn this inside out, okay, so here's what it looks like inside, and this will give you a good idea of what I took in, which really was not that drastic. So if you look at my crotch, I went from 0, you know, to about 3/8 of an inch. It's almost 3/8 of an inch, and then 3/8 of an inch all the way down. So that's what I took in to remove or pull in some of this back leg after I had taken in the side and inseam. So what we're going to do here is I've got this part of the pattern is what I'm going to move first. And basically I'm going to move it in so it's 3/8 of an inch overlap. So let me just do that. I'll just draw it first so you can see. Okay. And I'm just going to go like this. I'll put a piece of tape. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this one to sort of match it. I'm going to kind of keep it together. So I'm going to overlap that, the 3/8 of an inch too. Let me just draw the line so you can see. You know, I kind of want to keep it to, you know, even. So I'm just going to line that up like that. And I'm going to put my, there. All right, and so you can see, I'll show you what the overlap is. It's overlapping like this. And here's my overlap over here. You know, and then my overlap here. Oops. All right, so this is all what's overlapped and what I've gotten rid of. All of this is overlapped. Now here's the thing. If I was working with my full leg and I did this, what would happen? As I went down farther, it would overlap more and more and more until I got to the hem, and I would probably end up taking off 4 or 5 inches of the hem width. So working with it like this minimizes the effect of what's happening at the hem. So the cool thing is, let's pretend, I'm just gonna cut this. I don't need the front anymore. I'm gonna cut this. Let's pretend this was the bottom of my leg. Okay. I know it's not exactly the bottom of my leg, but what I can do is I can trim off my extra here, because this is what I was getting rid of. And I could trim off this. Okay, so let's say I trimmed off the parts that I adjusted, I can put this back on and I can line it up with the front, or I mean the side seam, and you want to make sure that they're touching here and here. So this matches up here, make sure that's exactly even, make sure this is even here, and then you would tape it together. And you do have a little bit of a gap at the center because you pivoted in. So this is okay, we're just going to fill that in. Okay, so this isn't an adjustment to really get rid of a lot of vertical length. I think if you look at it, we did get rid of a little bit of vertical length, but this is more about taking in the ease this way. And now that I've got this matched up, I can continue this straight down. Okay, and you can see it just makes it a very easy way to finish the leg. So if I cut this all off, and of course this would be a rectangle if it really was the bottom of my leg, but just to give you an idea of how easy that is to work with. Now this was not affected by the change up here, so that's an easy way to deal with the bottom part of the leg. All right, so please let me know if you have questions about this. Let me just put some tape here. Okay, but that's how you would take it in.